Hello everyone, this is Grace. It is March the 2nd, 2024, and we are continuing our study on the 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And we went over our chart here. I'll just give you a quick look at it real quick. We went over this chart in the first video. We'll be looking at this chart as we go through the scriptures and we read the matching scriptures for that cover the 3 days and 3 nights. But just to give you a quick look at it, it gives you step by step what happened each day as I broke down the scriptures, because they were all lined up and kind of intermingled with one another in order to try and make it one day. And then when you consider that they took out the travel for Pilate, they added a little lie in there, then that shortened it as well. So this is the chart, and I will attach it so that you can view it on your own as well. But this is what we'll be using as we go through. Okay, so now we're not going to go over the arrest of Jesus, but he was arrested here, the betrayal and the arrest of Jesus. And then they took him to Ananias, and then Ananias and Caiaphas. I can't remember how to pronounce his name. I don't know. Anyway, then the band and the captain and the officers of the Jews took Jesus and bound him. Hold on, there's some noise. And led him away to Ananias first, for he was father-in-law to Caiaphas, which was the high priest that same year. Now Caiaphas was he which gave counsel to the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. Then Peter denies Jesus, and the cock crows. Here is where Caiaphas actually is questioning Jesus. The high priest then asked Jesus of his disciples and of his doctrine. This thing is moving on its own. The high priest then asked Jesus of his disciples and of his doctrine. Jesus answered him, I spake openly to the world. I ever taught in the synagogues and in the temple, whither the Jews always resort, and in secret have I said nothing. Why askest thou me? Ask them which heard me what I have said unto them. Behold, they know what I said. And when he had thus spoken, one of the officers which stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, and said, Answerest thou the high priest so? Jesus answered him, If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why smitest thou me? Then now Ananias had sent him bound unto Caiaphas the high priest. Peter denies Jesus again. This is where the cock crows. And we're going to stop here, because here they've taken him before Caiaphas, and we want to see where he, so we're going to stop here. We're going to read him before the other. Before the high priest and the other books. So, Matthew 26. Oh, I think I marked it here to get us started. Yep. I'll just leave that. So, the betrayal and the arrest of Jesus. Here, Jesus is before. So, also, this would have been part of the questioning. Hold on. Okay, I'm not sure if I included that in. So let's just go ahead the way that I have it marked here. So Jesus before Caiaphas and the council. And they that had laid hold on Jesus led him away to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were assembled. But Peter followed him afar off unto the high priest's palace, and went in and sat with the servants to see the end. Now the chief priests and elders and all the council sought false witness against Jesus to put him to death, but found none. Yea, this is what they did all night and into the morning, all the way up until the next day in the afternoon. People were coming in bearing false witness against Jesus, but none of their stories lined up. But found none. Yea, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. At last came 2 false witnesses, and said, This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. And the high priest arose and said unto him, and the reason why I either put this in the next day or at the end of the morning was because it said at the last came 2 false witnesses, and said, This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. And the high priest arose and said unto him, Answerest thou nothing? What is it which these witness against thee? So we're moving into the next day here because it says at the last. So, but Jesus held his peace, and the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God, that thou tell us whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said unto him, Thou hast said, nevertheless, I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, He has spoken blasphemy. What further need have we of witnesses? Behold, now ye have heard his blasphemy. What think ye? They answered and said, He is guilty of death. Then did they spit in his face and buffeted him. They hit him, and others smote him with the palms of their hands, saying, Prophesy unto us, thou Christ, who is he that smote thee? I'm not sure if buffeted him. Let's see what that is. Yes, Hannah. Okay, so then Peter denies Jesus. The cock crows, signifying the end of the beginning of the new day. But that would have happened before, because we're looking at high noon now. They were there all day questioning those men, questioning different witnesses. And it was at the end of the day that the last 2 witnesses came. They thought that they finally found something on Jesus so that they could take him to Pilate. Pilate seemed to hold court at high noon. And then he would call the people, and I'm repeating this, but I want to have it on record in this part where we're actually doing the study. So he would hold court, and he had a seat that was outside, and the people would stand outside, and he would question the accused in front of them, and people could bring charges against him, the accused, out there at the court. And then he would sit in his seat and he would make a ruling against the people. And it seemed as though it would start at high noon, because that's when everybody seemed to move toward the temple. And Jesus, there would be spots in the story where Jesus would just disappear until the morning of the next day. Or when it says morning here, this is the word for high noon. It's saying when high noon had come, that's the next day. all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. They had already been taking counsel all night. They're going to go and deliver him to Pilate. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate and the governor. So they're going to take him to Pilate. They met at the morning because they had spent the day questioning people. They took some time to eat, and then they came back and used Jesus' own words against him in order to justify the sentence that they had taken to Pilate and the charges they had taken to Pilate. So we don't need Judas hangs himself. We'll go on. But you're going to see where they're going to be accusing him in front of Pilate because they're all standing outside. And the people are out there as well. And Jesus stood before the governor. And the governor asked him, saying, Art thou the king of the Jews? And Jesus said unto him, Thou sayest. And when he was accused of the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. So he couldn't answer anything. It couldn't say he answered nothing if he wasn't right there while Pilate was questioning him. If the chief priests and the scribes weren't right there while Pilate was questioning him. But everything was done outside the temple. Outside, not the temple, the hall. So, anyway, let's continue on. Then said Pilate unto him, Hearest thou not how many things they witness against thee? And he answered unto him, to never a word, insomuch that the governor marveled greatly. Let me make sure. I think we might have gone too far. Because sometimes they would skip one of the 3 trials that he had. So we need to look at Matthew. So 26. He was questioned in chapter 26. And then chapter 27. This is the first time. So this is correct. So I think we're going to stop there because there's a lot missing here that's in Luke. So we'll have to look at Mark and Luke before we go further. So we'll stop here. And we'll mark this. Let's go to Mark first. Yeah, okay. So, Jesus was arrested up here, and they laid their hands on him and took him and Jesus before the council. And they led Jesus away to the high priest, and with him were assembled all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes. And Peter followed him afar off, even to the palace of the high priest. And he sat with the servants and warmed himself at the fire. And the chief priests and all the council sought for witness against Jesus to put him to death, and found none. For many bare false witness against him, but their witness agreed not. And there arose certain and bare false witness against him, saying, I can't remember which one of these words was a plural. I think it was this certain, which was a plural, and then you see it reflected here in the word we. And there was the certain, which was the 2, and bare false witness against him, saying, We heard him say, I will destroy the temple that is made with hands, and within 3 days I will build another made without hands. But neither so did their witness agree together. And the high priest stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, saying, Answerest thou nothing? What is it which these witness against thee? But he held his peace, and answering nothing, Again, the high priest asked him and said unto him, Art thou the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am, and ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest rent his clothes and said, What need we any further witness? We have heard the blasphemy. What think ye? And they all condemned him to be guilty of death. And some began to spit on him, and to cover his face, and to buffet him, and to say unto him, Prophesy. And the servants did strike him with the palms of their hands. Peter denies Jesus. And here's where the cock crowed. And I don't know why I highlighted that, but let's continue on. Oh, here he's delivered to Pilate. And straightway in the morning, again this morning is high noon, the beginning of the next day, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders. They would have been continuing that consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council, and bound Jesus and carried him away and delivered him to Pilate. And Pilate asked him, either they were continuing it or they ended it at the end of the day for the when the two witnesses were there, and then Jesus testified against himself. And I suppose they could have began it again where they all met together at high noon after lunch or something like that, and then went to see Pilate. Okay, but it was during the examination, but they held the examination all day. You could tell by the words, because it says they were searching for someone to witness against him. So it gives the impression that it was over a prolonged period of time. And Pilate asked him, Art thou the king of the Jews? And he answering, said unto him, Thou sayest, same words that were used, thou sayest it. And the chief priests accused him of many things, but he answered nothing. Again, they were standing there during the questioning. And Pilate asked him again, saying, Answerest thou nothing? Behold, how many things they witness against thee. But Jesus yet answered nothing, so that Pilate marveled. And, okay, we'll have to stop here because we're getting into another part. And we'll mark that. And then we will go to Luke. So, okay, Jesus is betrayed and arrested. Peter denies Jesus. Jesus is mocked. I did put this in here, but I don't remember. This is, I think, when he was with Ananias. So, this is where Peter, the cock crows, and Peter had denied him. And the men that held Jesus mocked him and smote him. And when they had blindfolded him, they struck him on the face and asked him, saying, Prophesy, who is that smote thee? And many other things blasphemous spake they against him. Jesus before the council. And as soon as it was day, the elder, that's daylight, I think I decided that was daylight, because this can also mean the beginning of a day, so it could have meant either. Let's read and see what it comes out to be, because this word for day it means 24 hours, but it also had a second meaning, which I didn't use that meaning. I recall natural day. In the daytime. I don't remember, so let's just read it and look at the context and find out, because I didn't mark it. Art thou the Christ? Art thou the Christ? Tell us. And he said unto them, If I tell you, ye will not believe, and if I also ask you, you will not answer me, nor let me go. Actually, I should have marked it. Hold on. Let's look at the chart here. Luke 22:66. So Luke Luke 23. Okay. So this would have been at high noon. 66 through 71. This would have been Wednesday evening. So Wednesday at the beginning of the day. Okay, that is the way I translated. I went with my translation rather than morning. But I think that when you look at the dictionary, if I would have taken the time to read it, it could have been used either way. But I went with high noon, the beginning of the next 24-hour day. So it was the elders of the people and the chief priests and the scribes came together and led him into their council. So they came together. This is after the two witnesses, after he witnessed against himself. Art thou the Christ? Tell us. And he said unto them, if I tell you, you will not believe. Or he see, I think all of it kind of went together. That was the way I had it in my mind when I first studied it. But now I'm not certain. And if I also ask you, you will not answer me, nor let me go. Hereafter shall the Son of Man sit on the right hand of the power of God. Then said they all, art thou then the Son of God? And he said unto them, ye say that I am. And they said, what need we any further witness? For we ourselves have heard out of his own mouth. Yeah, so this was the next day. It was after the two witnesses, but not after he convicted himself. He convicted himself after high noon. So let's continue on. Jesus before Pilate. And the whole multitude of them arose and led him unto Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, we found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ a king. And Pilate asked him, saying, art thou the king of the Jews? And he answered him and said, thou sayest it. Then said Pilate to the chief priests and to the people, I find no fault in this man. So he was going to let him go. And they were the more fierce, saying, he stirreth up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, beginning from Galilee to this place. So Pilate couldn't let him go. And so when he heard he was from Galilee, he's going to try sending him to Herod. When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked whether the man were a Galilean. And as soon as he knew that he belonged unto Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who himself also was at Jerusalem at that time. This is not true. I want you to think now. If you say are the king of ABC country, can you come to America and start just bossing people around and trying people for breaking your laws? You can't do that. Even if he was in Jerusalem, which he was not, they were trying to condense everything into one day. It's 3 days, and they had to find a way to condense everything into one day. So they just had everything run into each other. And they took stuff out, and they knew there was no way they could have all of this in one day if they had to travel to Galilee and then travel back. So they put this in here, but he wasn't even friends with Herod. How is he going to let Herod try a person under his jurisdiction in his town, and he don't even like him? There's no chance at all. They put this in here in order to deceive you so that they could squeeze everything into 1 or 2 days. And when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceeding glad, for he was desirous to see him of a long time. He would have saw him if he was in Jerusalem. He was all over. One moment. He was desirous to see him of a long season, because he had heard many things of him, and he hoped to have seen some miracle done by him. Then he questioned with him in many words, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and the scribes stood and vehemently accused him. So they were in the presence of him, questioning him, because they were in the courts of Herod. And he held his court similar to Pilate. They could stand there and accuse him while he was being questioned. And that's exactly what they did. And Herod, and this was not in Jerusalem. And Herod, if he was friends with Pilate, then he probably would have been in Jerusalem before, and he wouldn't have been desirous over a long season to see who Jesus was. And the chief priests and the scribes stood and vehemently accused him. And Herod, with his men, he had his men of war. Herod, with his men of war, set him at naught and mocked him and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him again to Pilate. Now, assuming they did know where to find Herod while he was there in Jerusalem, because he obviously was not at the courts of Pilate, because they were not friends. It's going to tell us that in a moment. He just happens to have a gorgeous robe wherever he was. Is he just carrying around spare robes? He had to have been in the courts of the hall. I mean, he didn't have to. He could have just had a robe handy that his guards had access to and felt that they could just snatch up and put on Jesus to mock him. Or he could have been at the hall, and the men of war were well acquainted with the hall and what was there, and grabbed a robe from somewhere in that hall and threw it over him. So anyway, he was arrayed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him to Pilate. So he had his men of war there with him. He was at his hall. He was not trying to preside a court over a man in a hall in an area where he had no jurisdiction. He had no jurisdiction in Jerusalem. And the same day Pilate and Herod were made friends together, for before they were at enmity between themselves. And Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, again, Pilate is getting ready to hold court again. So he calls the people together. He's going to hold it at high noon or something like that, because that seems to be the time period that all of his courts adjourn, except the last one where the people were outside screaming for him to come out because they wanted him to let him go before the crucifixion was done in the morning. Anyway, and Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said unto him, Ye have brought this man unto me as one that perverted the people. And behold, I have examined him before you, and have found no fault in this man touching those things whereof you accuse him. No, nor yet Herod, for I sent you to him. And lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore chastise him and release him. This is his second time before Herod. He says he's going to chastise him and he's going to release him, and he's done with it. For of a necessity I must release one of them, one unto you at the feast. So he's going to release him as the person that's going to be released at the feast. That's the plan. And so I'm pretty sure this is next. Let's just consult to make sure. Oh, I can't. Yeah, we did read. We read John. So Luke, we're at Luke 23:18. Oh, well, we still need to read some more of John. So we left off at 25, I guess. No, at 15. So, no, I think we read this where he was examined the first time. And we're 18. Here. The second time. So we do need to read John, and there's some reading that we have in Matthew as well. So let's try and do I would have stopped before, but Let's go ahead and try and do Matthew 27:15, and then we start at the beginning of chapter 19 and for John. We might have to stop in the middle of one of these readings. It was 27:15. So let's go to Matthew. Oh, I forgot to set the bookmark. Hold on. Let's go back. I messed up. Okay, there's that. But I messed up my bookmark for John, so we'll have to find that manually. So 27:15. Yeah, we're not going to read this. We don't have enough time. We'll have to pick up here. If we have to, we'll reread Luke as well, since I read that and it goes with the next group of readings. We'll just read from 13 to 17. It won't be a big deal. And then we'll also read from John the beginning of John chapter 19. That's what we'll start in the next video. I will. Okay, stop playing with me now. Okay, forget it. I will talk with you in the next video.